Alrighty. Welcome back to Dr. Nick Lenz's Doctor Who Reviews, episode 11. This is reviewing technically what this one is. This is the... I'm just take a look and see about the correct number here. 1, 2, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Yeah, this is the 8th second Doctor story. The Tomb of the Cybermen. And this one also started out the 5th season of Doctor Who. Yes, this very story did. If you're curious to how many episodes this is approximately 4 episodes. Yeah, kind of short. I mean, just like the first two. 4 episodes apiece. Yep. This one basically is a debut of a few different things in this one. Well, this is also the first time that Victoria, this is her first adventure inside the TARDIS. Not her first appearance per se, but it's second start featuring her, well, her first adventure in the TARDIS. She leaves at the end of the season with Fury Deep. Yep. Now, with this one, this is technically the second Doctor's second encounter with the Cybermen. And here's a fun little thing about this one. They actually reference the first 2 Cybermen stories. Yep, they're referencing here. Which we're like, that's interesting. Have they ever done this before? Well, there's one other story that has done this, and that was Attack of the Cybermen. Yep. Now, aside from the fact this is the second Cyberman story for Patrick Troughton, this is also, believe it or not, the earliest Doctor Who story to be completed. Yes. And it's the only Cyberman story in the entirety of Classic Who in the black and white era that is completely 100% intact. Originally, this was lost for a long time. Yes. Until they found it in 1991 in Hong Kong. Yep. This one also says debut of the Cyber Controller. Well, he's not on the cover per se. He's actually this guy right here. Yeah, it looked very close to the guy with a little dome in his head. Yeah, that's a Cyber Controller. This is also debut of the Cybermen and the planet Telos. I believe it's the planet, right? The name of the planet is Telos. Yes. For Telos itself, this is actually one of 2 stories it appears in. Next time it appears is not until the story Attack of the Cybermen, over 20 years later. Yep. This one started kind of interestingly with, well, picking up exactly where we left off with the evil dialects. I will eventually cover that one, where all the attacks are going on. And you have Victoria come on the charts first time. This is by far the only season ever to open up like this. Ever in the history of Doctor Who, you just open up, the first thing you see the outside of the TARDIS, and you go inside, and you see the doors open, and bam! Inside the TARDIS. And then they go to another planet. Now, they start on Skaro at the start of the story, the very, first couple minutes of the story, and then they go to the planet Telos, which is mostly a deserted planet. Not much is known about Telos in this story. The planet itself is not expanded upon until Attack of the Cybermen, which that one I will get to when I get my hands on the thing. So they go into the planet, and then we see the expedition led by a guy who was Professor Perry. This Eric Clegg guy. This guy's annoying as all hell. Yes. There's also this big black guy in the story named Tobman. He's played by a guy named Roy Stewart. If you've seen the film Live and Let Die from James Bond, it's the same actor. Yep, this is what he did. This came out in 1960, roughly 4 years before that film came out. Though at the time this was coming out, James Bond was produced in color, not in black and white. I don't know if it was produced in black and white. I've never seen black and white. So, we arrive at the Tomb of the Cybermen. They've heard also as a city as well. Now, the first time you see a Cyberman in this story, technically does not appear until the end of episode 1. I'll get to that. So, they have one of the guys basically accidentally get killed by electrocution, mainly because the doors are electrified. So, the Doctor himself examines the doors, like, okay, these doors are broken, we can open up. He tries to open up, doesn't do very well. And then Jamie steps in, and he's like, well, I haven't worked out much lately. I'm like, okay, How about this guy? He's probably good, useful for that. And, well, everybody probably agrees with that. Yeah, he definitely is good enough to open these doors. And, yeah, this also leads into what happens at the end of the story related to the character. Toan himself doesn't really speak very much in this story. He speaks like maybe a few times throughout the entirety of the 4 episodes. And again, inside it's like, wow, this actually is a pretty good looking set. Yes, I got handed to the designer of this one. The production designer, let's see, the guy who designed this, let's see. It's produced by Peter Brandt. Actually, he's produced by. Yeah, I'm not really sure who exactly designed this thing. I gotta say, it looks really good. And also, I gotta point out something interesting about this one. Okay, this one is not as hokey as Moonbase. Yeah, not as hokey as Moonbase. So, they basically look at some various controls, and of course, they think, oh, there's only 2 doors. One leading back outside, and the other is this hatch. And Doctor points out, though, technically, no, there are 2 more doors. You're like, okay, where are they? One over there, and one over there. He flips and switches, and they go in. One room is basically a weapons testing room. Interesting. The other one is kind of like a storage facility. Mostly anyways. And then, of course, one of them activates the testing. And out pops out Cyberman ending episode 1. Now, this is not an actual Cyberman. This is a robot Cyberman. No human parts of it. Nothing. Just basically a model for display. And, of course, the first time we see a cyber gun. Though, I should point out, though, next time we see a cyber gun, Now, the thing is, the thing of the cyber guns are, they actually are a little more bulkier in later story. This is more like a cyber pistol than a regular cyber gun. So eventually, of course, they do eventually open up the hatch that goes down to the tomb himself. And they go inside like, wow. Now, I should point out, though, that this is actually done, the whole tomb itself, this one thing of a tomb. Though, in Tomb of Cybermen, in the Attack of Cybermen, looks completely different, by the way. Yeah, this particular thing is cold. Yeah, they mentioned it's cold down there. And the doctor just puts on a cloak. Everyone else puts on, like, actual coats. Which is interesting, probably because doctor's wearing pants. So, they go inside, and then eventually they get in there. Somehow they reactivate because they're all frozen. And then they rip open like this. Now, I should point out that this is actually done via sort of like claymation mostly. And it's on this, like, a small, like, little model. And they all go out. And then, of course, they open up this door with the Cyberman symbol. They open it up, and we see the Cyber Controller. As the Bree had a very funny thing of saying, occupied, occupied, occupied. I thought that was kind of hilarious, the fact when he did that. And the Cyber Controller himself, I mean, the biggest difference with him is that he doesn't have the chest thing in front of him, and he's got a big dome on his head. Yeah, and this guy is voiced by... He's played by a guy named Michael Comer, who actually does return for Attack of Cybermen. Which makes sense because we're on Telos. So, like, Krieg himself makes a plea that he's going to, well, team up with him. He's like, nah, we're going to break your hand. And I love the guy. I think Michael does a fantastic job playing the Cyber Controller. Oh, fun little fact about the Cyber Controller. 1 of 3 stories he appears in. He appears in this story, Nightmare on Silver, which appears in New Who, and also he appears in the second story, the one story, one time the 6th Doctor fought Attack of the Cybermen, played by, of course, the same guy. I'm thinking, that's interesting, that the Cyber Controller, now, the Doctor points out, though, that this Cyber Controller, before this, we see the little Cybermen. These are like, basically kind of like a bit of an upgrade from the original version. Basically, these are like the Mark I Cybermen. These look like very cheap models. Later on, they look a lot more better, per se. Now, the Cybermen himself would actually appear in the following, like... Yeah, in the following, like, few stories. Like, they appeared also in Invasion. And the last time technically they appeared was actually in Revenge of the Cybermen, which I had previously covered. Take a look at the actual archives. I can't believe actually archives, because what's a playlist? Yep, so... Oh, by the way, how did the Doctor figure out, though, that, well, these are Cybermen? Looked up his 500-year-old diary. Yep, looked it up. And he also pointed out, though, that he's actually 459 years old in the story. Yes, I should point out something about that. Doctor Who has been very inconsistent when it comes to Doctor's age. At one point, they say he's 750. This, of course, going to Tom Baker. When it comes to, in the case of Spencer McCoy, he says like 930. And I think like Eccleston said he was like 900. And according to Matt Smith, he's like a 1,000 year, like 1,100 years old. The actual age of the Doctor has been a complete mystery the whole series. Though I'm not going to get into what happened in Timeless Child because that was kind of dumb. So, at one point, it looked like Jamie was going to get away from. Now, they do have like a subplot here. The soldiers here, they have ex-soldiers. One of whom is a sexist. You're like, oh, nobody need a woman down there. Well, this was technically written back in the mid-'60s, so I'll let that slide because it's a minor thing. It's only against Vicky, not against like anybody like Vicky, Victoria. Also, she doesn't like to be called Vicky in this story. Nope, she is not like that at all. So, yeah, and of course, Ebba looked like about to be cybernized, and of course, Click like, oh, you be lead Cyberman. He's like, really? Yeah, but with our brains. Like, oh crap. And then, of course, eventually, thanks to the soldier went down there, Captain Hopper, he goes down there, throws a bunch of smoke bombs everywhere, which that confuses the Cybermen, probably because they've never seen cyber bombs, and they all basically got up, and of course they do trap the Cybermen back in the tombs. They're not sealed per se, but then of course Klieg himself, him and of course the woman who's with them, her name is, if I can try to find her name here. Kofton. Yeah, she's one of the financiers of this expedition. She, of course, she turns on Victoria with an actual gun. Though she doesn't get attacked by a Cyberman, they get locked in a testing room. And then Klieg is like, I'll use this gun. And I'll threaten the Cybermen. Yep, overpowers the guys. And he says, Cyber Control, I'd like to talk to you. And of course, he agrees to work with him. And of course, then also, here's the thing. Tobin himself actually been captured by the Cybermen. And what does he do? Well, they convert his arms, per se. He's partially cybernized. Yeah, it's not full cybernization yet. And he's also under control of the cyber controller himself, who apparently has got lightning telepathy, which I thought that was kind of weird. Then, of course, like, well, eventually, of course, he does overpower the cyber controller, throw him to the side, look like it's about to stop him, and one of the Cybermen basically trying to punch a hole through the lid. Eventually, of course, the Cybermen himself are basically there. Prior to this, basically, the cyber controller is put in the room with everybody else. Then, of course, he gets energized, and of course, they overpower Klieg. The gun himself, the gun ends up in the cyber controller's hands. So, the cyber controller, it has Tobin turned against him and throws aside, like I said. Then pretty much, like, with him tossed aside, they basically refreeze the Cyberman. Though Klieg tries to stop them, but he basically fails. And thanks to basically Tobin, like, delaying him, all our Cybermen are frozen. And they all get out, and the ceiling is sealed. Like, look, we electrify everything, so let's get out of here. And then they basically is like, oh crap, here comes the cyber controller. And eventually they get everybody all outside, but the thing is electrified, so they push the gate closed, and the cyber controller try to get outside. And then Tobin sacrificed himself in order to basically seal up the doors. And then you have it where the Doctor claims, oh yeah, that might be the last to see the Cybermen. Not really. They actually show up like the start of the following season. Actually, they show up at the end of this season. So yeah, they're absent for here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, roughly 6 stories later. Yep, 6 stories later, that's when they finally return. Yep. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, I give this story roughly a 9 out of 10. It's an excellent story. It's definitely a marked improvement over Moonbase, definitely. Also, it's when the Doctor is talking to the cyber leaders, like, why you free yourself? To survive. And he's like, I remember. I've read about you. You caused destruction of our home planet, and you also stopped our conquest of the moon base. We were after the graviton. Like, oh, that's why you were there. I'm like, that's interesting. The fact that, well, that's like that. Yep. Now, as in the case of the second Doctor, like, how many stories technically left to talk about him? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 12, 13, 14. Roughly about 15 stories. It is interesting, though, that most of this Doctor Who review series, I've talked mostly about second Doctor stories. Well, with the next episode, it'll be a third Doctor story. Yep. But next video is going to be Comic Corner. And oh boy. Oh yeah, by the way. Yeah, 2 episodes of this one. This is the faceless one. I talked about. And I should point something about the logo. Now, this logo on this DVD, this is actually the current logo they have for Doctor Who. This logo here is the classic logo. A lot of my other DVDs have got this one. But faceless one's the reason why I got, because the reason I has that logo, because that was a more recent purchase. I actually got that last year. Yep. So yeah, that's a particular review. Stay tuned for my Comic Corner, which this one's going to be quite interesting. Basically discussing 2 series in a way, but you'll find out what it is, okay? Next video. Bye.